It was a calm evening in Los Angeles when Snoop Dogg pulled up to Dr. Dre's studio in a vintage lowrider. The two rap legends had spent decades making music together, but that night felt different. There was no album on the way, no press event, no cameras, just a private invitation from Dr. "Come through," the text had read. "Got something to play for you." Snoop walked through the glass doors of the compound and was greeted by the familiar scent of wood, speakers, and smoke. Dre stood at the mixing board, his face unreadable. "You ready?" he asked. "For what?" Snoop replied, grinning. "Don't worry," Dre said. "You'll see." They sat side by side in the dark studio. The lights were dim, casting a soft glow over the platinum plaques on the walls. Dre reached for a USB drive labeled Untitled 2001 Session. "This joint never left the vault," he said quietly. "I almost forgot it existed." Snoop's curiosity piqued. As the track loaded, the silence was tense, then the beat dropped. It was unmistakably Dre. Booming kicks, crisp snares, and a haunting synth melody that felt like a time capsule from the early 2000s. As Snoop listened, his eyes widened. Then he heard it. His own voice, young and sharp, spitting bars he had no memory of recording. It was a lost session. A piece of history that had been frozen in time. "Yo, what is this?" he whispered. Dre leaned back. "That's you, homie. 1999. We were in Detroit. You freestyled that whole verse after 2 blunts and a bottle of Henny. I never released it." Snoop sat still, almost in disbelief. The track hit hard, not just musically, but emotionally. He stood up, pacing slowly. This took me back," he said. "I remember that day. I was broke, scared, hungry. And you gave me a shot. That verse came from pain, real pain." The room fell silent again, the music still echoing. Dre finally said, "I didn't bring you here for nostalgia. I brought you here because I think the world needs to hear this now." Snoop nodded. "Then let's finish what we started," and, just like that, a lost moment was reborn. Over the next few days, Dre and Snoop immersed themselves in old tapes, hard drives, and boxes labeled with dates and cities. It was a time warp through their youth, filled with grainy demo tracks, forgotten freestyles, and rough cuts that never saw daylight. They uncovered unreleased features with Nate Dogg, hidden verses from Eminem, and even a young Kendrick Lamar, freestyle recorded before he was signed. Each file was like unearthing buried treasure. "We were sitting on a museum," Dre said. Snoop got emotional listening to Nate's voice. "Man, hearing him again, that's not just music. That's spirit," Dre nodded. "Some things age like wine. This stuff, it's timeless." They knew they had to treat it with care. They called in trusted engineers and producers to remaster the material. But they also wanted to add something new, something current. "Let's build around the old," Dre suggested. "Bridge the eras." New sessions began. Snoop laid fresh verses with a wisdom he didn't have back then. Dre's beats evolved too, more layered, more reflective. They didn't try to recreate the past. They let it speak while weaving it into the present. Word started to leak that something big was happening. Rap blogs speculated, but no one knew the full story. The mystery only added to the hype. "It's not an album," Dre told his team. "It's a resurrection." They decided to name the project Echoes, a tribute to lost voices, lost moments, and second chances. The first track to be finalized, the very one Snoop had heard that first night. Now remastered, extended, and emotionally raw. Dre added a chilling outro, a voicemail from Tupac, saved from an old tape, speaking about the future of West Coast rap. It felt prophetic. "Pac still speaking," Snoop whispered. "Even now." And so, echoes began to form, not just as music, but as memory. With 20 tracks near completion, Dre and Snoop decided it was time for a private listening session. No journalists, no labels, just a hand-picked group of old friends, protégés, and family. They called it One Night Only. The invitees included Eminem, Kendrick Lamar, Anderson.Paak, and even Ice Cube. They gathered at a private home theater in Malibu, where Dre had installed a custom sound system. Velvet curtains, candlelight, and vintage posters set the mood. Snoop opened the session. What you're about to hear ain't just music. It's us. The us that never got released. The first track played, and the room fell into a reverent hush. Eyes closed, heads nodded. Some people cried. When Nate Dogg's voice echoed through the speakers, Eminem visibly broke down. That voice. Man, he whispered. That was the hook that raised a generation. Kendrick looked stunned. This is a time machine. Each song told a story. Grief, hope, survival. Dre inserted voice memos of past studio banter. Snoop recited new verses over instrumentals they'd made 2 decades ago. It was raw, yet polished. Old, yet new. One standout track, Still Dre, Still Me, had Dre and Snoop rapping to their younger selves, reflecting on fame, loss, and legacy. The room erupted in applause. That's the one, Ice Cube said. That's history. After the last track faded out, Dre said, We ain't here to sell nostalgia. We here to complete the story. Snoop added, and this time, we're doing it our way. The guests left in silence, not out of disinterest, but out of respect. That felt like church, Kendrick said. And I just heard a sermon I didn't know I needed. By the next morning, social media was buzzing. One cryptic post from Eminem. Echoes. Soon. The anticipation exploded, and the rap world braced for something they hadn't felt in years. Excitement rooted in emotion. With the buzz reaching a fever pitch, Dre and Snoop knew they couldn't keep Echoes a secret any longer. They planned an announcement that was simple, yet powerful. No flashy trailer. No major label rollout. Just the truth. Snoop went live on Instagram, sitting in the studio with Dre beside him. Y'all been asking, he began. So here it is. Me and my brother Dre been digging through time. We found the old, added the new. What we got now? It's called Echoes, and it's coming. The live session hit over 2 million views. In under 30 minutes, fans spammed the comments, "Drop it now! Legends! I'm crying already and I haven't even heard it." The emotion was electric. Dre added, "This project is for the ones we lost, the ones we forgot, the verses we buried, and the voices that still deserve to be heard." Snoop nodded. "This one's for Nate, for Pac, for DOC, for us." Music. Blogs lit up. Headlines read, Dre and Snoop return with emotional time capsule. Unreleased tracks spark nostalgia. West Coast legends shake the internet. The announcement sparked a renewed appreciation for the roots of hip-hop. Even younger artists reacted. Tyler, the Creator, tweeted, "That Nate Dogg verse? Already got goosebumps." Doja Cat said on Live, "It's like they're rapping from a dream." The album release date was set. Friday at midnight, across all platforms, with no singles or teasers. "Let it hit all at once," Dre told the G team, like a wave. Fans began planning Echoes listening parties. Record stores prepped vinyls. Streaming services pushed banner ads. But the most hype came from those who had grown up with The Chronic, Doggy Style, and 2001. They knew this was personal, and as the countdown began, the world waited. Not just for beats, but for memories. At midnight, Echoes went live. From Los Angeles to Lagos, fans hit play. The opening track, Back to the Hallway, featured a sample of Dre and Snoop arguing over a beat from a 2000 session. "Don't touch that snare," Dre barked. "Watch me," Snoop replied. Then the track exploded. Twitter trended worldwide. Echoes. Dre and Snoop. Nate Dogg's voice. Spotify crashed briefly. Apple Music featured the album on its homepage with the title, "Legends Don't Die, They Echo." Listeners shared personal memories. "I was 13 the first time I heard Doggy Style. Now I'm crying at 40 listening to this," one post read. Others wrote about lost siblings, friendships, and years tied to the soundtrack of these artists. Critics dropped instant reviews. Rolling Stone. A moving bridge between eras, vintage Dre meets reflective Snoop. Pitchfork. Not about innovation, about resurrection. Billboard. Possibly the most emotional West Coast release since Tupac's Me Against the World. Snoop tweeted, "Junebug would have loved this." It was a nod to the emotional journey he'd shared publicly before. Fans replied, "He's here. We all feel it. YouTube flooded with reaction videos. Teens who had only heard Snoop on TikTok now saw him with new eyes. "This man's been through hell and still sounds like heaven," one user said through tears. By sunrise, Echoes had reached 100 million streams. But it wasn't the numbers that mattered. It was the impact. In the words of Dre, "It ain't about charts, it's about closure." The music industry watched in awe. Veteran producers called it a masterclass in curation. A&R executives at major labels scrambled to find their own archival treasures. Everyone suddenly wanted to reconnect with legacy. Record stores saw a 300% increase in vinyl sales. Echoes became the fastest-selling hip-hop physical release of the decade. Collectors shared photos holding the LPs like sacred relics. Award shows pivoted. The BET Awards added a tribute segment titled The Echo Effect, honoring lost artists. Dre and Snoop performed Still Dre, Still Me live for the first time, backed by a live orchestra and visuals of past collaborators smiling from the clouds. Jay-Z called Dre personally. "You made time bend, bro. This album don't sound like the past. It is the past, present, and future." Dre responded, "We had to honor what built us." Universal offered Dre and Snoop a legacy imprint deal to release unreleased material from West Coast artists, but they declined. "This ain't business," Snoop said. "This is blood." Young artists lined up to sample the beats, but Dre set a rule. "You can use them if you talk about something real. No clout raps, only heart." It was a creative challenge few dared to take. Meanwhile, universities began archiving Echoes for music history programs. Professors praised its narrative arc, raw honesty, and historical weight. "This is how you preserve culture," one wrote. And, in the streets, the songs blasted from car windows, barbershops, and block parties. Old heads cried. Young cats listened. Everyone, for a moment, was united by the same echo. After the release, Snoop took a quiet moment away from the spotlight. He walked the streets of Long Beach alone, hoodie up, headphones on, Echoes playing on loop. He stopped in front of the corner store where he and Nate used to freestyle after midnight. He lit a blunt and whispered, "We did it, fam." Back at his home studio, he recorded a video message to fans. "This album ain't about glory, it's about ghosts, and how they guide us." The video trended instantly. Dre also took time off. He went to his mother's house in Compton and sat in the backyard, listening to the raw sessions on a boombox. "I've been chasing perfection so long," he told her. But turns out, the imperfections were the gems. They both agreed. This wasn't a one-time drop. It was the start of something deeper. They began talks for a mentorship program, pairing OGs with upcoming producers and rappers to preserve hip-hop's soul. Snoop wrote a letter to Nate's family, thanking them for allowing his voice to live again. "He's still healing people," the letter read. "Still singing hooks from heaven." At night, Snoop sat with Corey and played the track Memory Lane. She cried. "You've never sounded more like yourself, Dad." He replied, "That's because I'm not rapping for applause anymore. I'm rapping to remember." And in that quiet space, after the noise faded, they both smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. Months passed, and the influence of Echoes didn't fade, it deepened. It became a cultural moment, referenced in movies, studied in classrooms, and quoted in sermons. A mural went up in South Central. Dre, Snoop, Nate Dogg, Tupac, and Eazy-E under a banner that read, "They spoke, we echoed." Tourists and locals alike visited it like a shrine. Dre and Snoop were honored by the Library of Congress, and Echoes was inducted into the National Recording Registry. The archivist called it a time capsule of authenticity. Young rappers started releasing their own echo tapes, dedicated to lost friends, parents, or struggles. The genre was shifting. Realness was back in fashion. Even the Grammys had to acknowledge the moment. Dre and Snoop were awarded a special Legacy Impact award. On stage, Snoop said, "We ain't here to look good. We here to leave truth behind." Dre added, "This wasn't just our story, it was all of yours." The most touching tribute came from Eminem. He released a spoken-word piece titled Brothers, detailing his early days with Dre and Snoop. "They saved me," he said. "They didn't just hear my music, they heard me." A fan from Brazil flew to California just to visit the studio where Echoes was made. He left a letter. "I don't speak English, but I felt every bar. And in that universal resonance, their legacy became untouchable. 1 year after the first listening session, Dre and Snoop returned to the Malibu Theater. This time, no audience. Just them. 2 seats, and one final track. It was a stripped-back beat with no drums, just piano, strings, and ambient sounds. Snoop's voice entered, soft and weathered. "I thought it was over, but the echo keeps calling," Dre followed. "I chased sound, found memory, and what's left now? Legacy." The track ended with a sample of their first ever recording together. Raw, crackling, full of youth. They sat in silence afterward. Snoop turned and said, "You think they'll remember us, right?" Dre smiled. "They already do." The final scene wasn't posted, wasn't shared. It stayed between them, an echo meant only for their hearts, but fans everywhere still hear it, in every verse, every beat, every pause, because some music doesn't end, it echoes.